Everyone wants to grow. Both personal and business growth is seen as valuable. However, we don't always manage to realize growth. Without research and data analytics, there's no compass. And even worse, there are still many methods applied today that mislead marketers. We at DVJ Insights believe that things should be done differently. We started our journey by using scientific insights to design the best methods focused on growth. At the same time, continuously asking marketers and clients what they need from research to improve marketing. At DVJ Insights, we share an ever-growing passion for research and data analytics. By sharing content, organizing events, our academic board, and in our daily support, we help our clients grow, understanding what their brand stands for and making advertising better. The success of our clients is the success of DVJ Insights. The journey of constant improvement was started in 2015, making us an award-winning and fast-growing agency. Our people are active worldwide from offices in London, Hamburg, and Utrecht. The choice to grow starts with the choice for the best research. DVJ Insights, the marketing and analytics agency for brand growth.
Hello and welcome at our annual Brand Growth event live from our studio in Amsterdam. Today we have a very special and exciting program with lots of different top speakers. It starts with Trix van der Vleuten from Versuni, followed by Professor Jenny van Dorm from the University of Groningen. After a short break, we will listen to the results of our brand growth study by Jorie van der Spijker, and the final presentation will be from Bibiana Rutert from Tony Chocolonely. But before we go into the program, I would like to share some background about this whole brand growth program, which started almost 10 years ago. At that time, we were invited by Business News Radio to give some master classes about the impact of how brands grow from Byron Sharp. And by doing that, we came into contact with lots of different academic people, lots of different practitioners. And one of the things that we've learned is that there's so much to learn and so much to share around the topic of growth. And that's when we decided we need to set up our own program. We need to do our own research, and we need to speak with people from the academic world and people from the practitioner world. We also thought at that time, as many things within DVJ, we need to decompose the question of growth, which means that you have to look at the different ingredients and try to be good in all of those individual ingredients. That's why we started with the brand, we followed up by media, we looked at the creative strength, we looked at the role of innovation, data-driven decision-making, and last year we looked at the point of purchase. And this year we've chosen the topic of corporate social responsibility. Corporate social responsibility as part of purpose. And for me, as being an owner of DVJ, I thought it's really an important topic because it basically is about the role you want to play in society. And if you think about the role you want to play in society, for me, the first thing that pops up is people. And how do you actually make the DVJ a great place to work? And that for me is the first and most important part of corporate social responsibility. And besides that, we also try to do good for society. We sponsor the Beat Batten Foundation, and we do many activities around for charity and make sure that we become active to support all those great initiatives. But corporate social responsibility is also about how you treat the environment, what your travel policy is, how you choose your partners. One of the things that we've decided as a company is not to work for the tobacco industry because we don't want to support their growth. So there are many important topics around corporate social responsibility that we found important and that we actively do. But the personal struggle I always have is how do you communicate about that? Is it something you should say or is it something you should do and not talk about? And I hope today we will find the answers to all of these questions. And the first speaker of today is Trix van Vleuten. Trix van der Vleuten. And I know Trix van der Vleuten already for many years, and I sometimes say they're very good marketeers and they're top marketeers, and I see Trix as one of the top marketeers I ever worked with. I've met her in different roles in different organizations, and everywhere she was able to create significant impact in the organizations that you work for. So I'm very happy, very proud to see you here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. And I'm getting blushes on my face. But thank you so much, Lucas. Hi, I'm Trix van der Vleuten. I am the head of global brands and marketing strategies at Versuni, formerly known as Philips Domestic Appliances. And beside my role as being a global marketeer, I had the privilege to work for other companies, as Lucas just mentioned. I was CMO of KFC in Northern Europe, but also a lot of CPG companies. I had the privilege to work for great brands in companies like SABMiller, FrieslandCampina, PepsiCo, and also KraftHeinz. But my most important role in life, I think, is being a proud mom of 3. And today, talking about sustainability and the challenge that is there on the table, is sustainability an engine for growth? I'll give you a spoiler alert, I have 2 answers. It's a yes, but it's also definitely a no. And as a marketeer, I always look at the consumer. But this time, the transition, I don't believe it will come from the consumer. So if you look from a consumer perspective, people rather save their wallet than the planet. 80% of the people acknowledge the fact that they would rather spend their money on their own to save money instead of saving the planet, according to Kantar research recently done around sustainability. And also people, and we all seen that in a lot of research we have been conducting all around the globe, with or without DVJ, you actually see that people say that they want to do more on sustainability, and that's around 65%, but 25% actually does do it. So there's a huge gap in saying and doing. But there's also, I would say, a big yes. And the reason is because legislation will kick in very fast. ESG will come as a obligated reporting in 24-25 for listed companies. This means that every listed company will share their data around environment, sustainability, and governance. And this will unlock a huge data transparency for investors, but also for talent. And as just mentioned, talent is super important. We are in a huge transition in Versuni, and I have to say I have seen a tremendous amount of people being the first round of the global marketing team in the talent acquisition part. And I'll tell you a story. So I think I interviewed about 200 marketeers so far, and hopefully we will see more talent coming in soon as we're growing. But I walked in the room as I do every time. It's an average office, right? Nice glass walls, beautiful view on the city of Amsterdam. And I have my sidekick next to me, Louise, who we interview a lot of people. And there was one woman who came for a job. She was highly ambitious, highly skilled on the content. And I was sitting in front of her, and we had a conversation. And in the end, I asked the question, I don't really understand why you're here. Versuni is relatively small. Yes, we have a global presence. We are out there for around 100 countries around the globe. We do have beautiful brands to work for, but you're so ambitious. It's why do you want to work for us? And she said, yes, I am not here because I don't get probably the same amount of salary I would get somewhere else. I won't choose you because I have a big corporate ladder that I can climb very fast because you're very flat in the way your setup of the organization is. But the reason why I'm here is because I truly believe in your purpose. Your purpose of turning houses into homes, on actually making an impact in people's lives, is the reason why I'm here. So I fully underline the fact that attracting talent for a company is a major unlocker for potential growth. So it's a huge yes on the company side. But also from a marketing perspective, if you look on if we are going to take ESG seriously, which we have to do due to legislation, that will also unlock a different way of looking at the world. There will be more long-term vision in our way of working, because ESG is not something you turn around and it just suddenly happens. It's a long-term view. And I had the privilege to talk 5 years ago also in this forum. And we listened to Les Binet, but we also, of course, heard the work of Byron Sharp. And it all has to do with long-term perspective. Building a brand you don't do overnight. You actually need to keep investing in it for a long term. So long-term thinking on the back of ESG, because sustainability is not something you change easily, has a huge unlocking effect. And there's another big component from a marketing perspective, especially if you look from an innovation perspective, because if we need to produce products, and in the ESG, it's also very important that you look at the scope 3, that's the definition of it. So how does your product work in the consumers' houses at the moment after they bought the product? That will also change our way of thinking on how do we set up an innovation pipeline where a product will last longer and will have less impact on the people and planet when it's in home at your consumer. So a lot of different things that are going to happen from a long-term perspective. And also if you think about brands, there's a great opportunity to actually drive those change. And a lot of people think, brands, how does that work? I think there is a huge opportunity for us as marketeers, as true brand owners, to drive that change. And the biggest thing is if you really look at the numbers, and Edelman did a very nice research, I can highly recommend reading that around sustainability. And they say, and we hear it every time, Gen Z is going to lead the way. But Gen Z is also 34 years old. And if you cannot, sustainability is also positioned as things you cannot do, right? Can you take the plane? Can you still choose stuff like fast fashion, because that's not good? So how is a sustainable lifestyle not being boring? And I think we as marketeers can change that narrative. And there are great examples of brands doing that, exactly that. And there are 3 forms of brands that you can actually, look into when thinking about sustainability in a way that is appealing even also to that younger audience. There are 3 types. First, if you need to hit a threshold for relevancy. So are you still relevant? Do consumers still think about you when stepping into the category? The second thing is when you use sustainability as a point of difference, as your differentiation in the market. And the third one, and we will hear about it, of course, with Bibiane later on, when founders are still leading the principles of the brand. I will start with the first one, the threshold. Every consumer wants to not feel guilty. Every person doesn't want to feel guilty. And also that also accounts for brands. So a great example of the KFC work in the UK around animal welfare, where people from the UK really thought, I don't know about this brand, where does the chicken come from? They had a beautiful campaign, or I would say a very bold campaign, together with Jack and Meg and Mother London, that was created around this. So they really showed the fact that the chicken that was before unknown where it came from the UK, and they used the whole chicken. And the other example of something where you meet a threshold is in the banking industry. MasterCard had, it's a bank, right? It's a service, you don't see it. It's not really human. But how can you then humanize a brand in a way that people, sort of think about you when stepping into the category? And MasterCard did a beautiful campaign called TrueCard. And in that TrueCard, they actually showed people who have a transgender insight. And it's really hard for them if they need to show their card to actually not be judged by the fact that the one who receives the card might see somebody else on the other end of the counter. And by unlocking this, it did two things. One, it created relevancy to talk about MasterCard in a different context. And secondly, they opened the door for potential new customers to be part of their new, I would say, base of potential consumers they could talk to. So that is on Threshold 2 great examples on how you can unlock relevancy and meet the threshold of what people in this world today expect from you at the minimum. The second one is the group where you use positioning as your differentiator through the lens of sustainability. And I think Unilever is a great example of how they built some of their big billion brands in this way. And the concept is, I would say, fairly, well, easy. Easy is always a good thing in marketing, where you actually use the product truths in combination with the category benefits. Hellmann's, for instance, I'm not sure if you know the brand, but probably you do. It's a mayonnaise brand, and their campaign and their positioning in the market is all around great make taste, not waste. Addressing food waste in a way to differentiate what the category always does, right? Mayonnaise makes everything taste good. But by owning that positioning, really standing out of the category through the lens of sustainability is a great example of how good can look like choosing for one of these directions on positioning. And of course, the work they have done with Dove around self-esteem, I would say, is known in this group I'm talking to today. And the third one, and I think this is the one where I would say most marketeers are always a little jealous of, so I'm sure you will hear a lot of great stuff from Bibiane going forward. But those are the brands where the founder did not leave his foundation on the way he looked at the world. And Tony Chocolonely is a great example. I won't talk about it. But Patagonia, I think, is, I would say, the one I'm super jealous of, right? So even if your biggest shareholder in the end is Earth, because you basically assigned it and gave it to the world, I think is truly living the brand from your products to your advertising to actually how you're owned. So those things might seem very far away from you because it's maybe you don't own the brand, or maybe you are not there to influence yet, or you just did a positioning around a brand way of setting up your brand portfolio. But there are things you can do today, and I think we owe it, at least me as a mom to my daughter, that I think we can do something today. So I have some questions you can ask yourself before you actually take on your next brief. Do you have in your briefing a question around casting? Do we cast people because they have a certain way of looking, or do we ask people to be themselves? Do we require people to wear, for instance, their hair in a certain way because it looks nice on the picture, or do we represent them who they really are? Do we ask in your pitch deck around sustainability? Do we ask our agencies in the pitch, what is your diversity policy? Or are you, as Lucas just mentioned, a great place to work for your employees? We hold a wallet and we have a role to play in this society. So that was my talk, and I will share the examples later on via an email so that you can look at it, how great work that is.
Well, thank you, Trix, for your story, and also a story without slides. In the market research industry where I come from, we always use slides, a lot of numbers and a lot of evidence for it. One of the things that, and I will sometimes have to look here for some questions coming from the audience, but one of the questions I had, when I finished university, I actually applied for a job at Philips, and I was
Always a good
rejected.
idea.
I was rejected, of course. That's why I ended up in the role I'm now. But do you also make, let's say, sharing the values of the company part of the recruitment process?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, our purpose, turning house into homes, is, I must say, I totally underestimated it, is one of our biggest magnets for talent. Because people nowadays really want to make an impact into what they do, where they put their effort and time in, and a purpose and your values and your reasons to believe really help to build that and attract that talent. Yeah, so I can highly recommend thinking about your values when starting recruiting people.
Okay. And another question that popped up was a lot of the things that you say comes out very natural. So they're natural things, but I can imagine that, for example, the example you gave around KFC is that it also sometimes feels, do you really need to communicate about that? And I have the same as you addressed also the role of an owner. We try to do a lot of good things. I think diversity, equality, the way we organize ourselves, I think is the most important driver for that. But how do you actually communicate it? Sometimes you don't want to emphasize it too much because then it maybe becomes like a trick. How, in your experience, how have you approached those situations?
Yeah, I think the best thing is not to talk about it, right? So to have that humble approach and just do it, right? But sometimes in business, and especially sometimes in brand, you need to maybe over-communicate in order to stand out. Because, yeah, if people don't know it, why would they suddenly know it if you're so humble about things? So sometimes from a business perspective, so to unlock growth, you might need to come across even more bold and then tune down again and make sure that you do the things at the way people just expect you to do from a relevancy perspective.
And you mentioned also the purpose of Versuni, turning houses into homes. How do you relate that to this topic, to the corporate social responsibility or sustainability, because it's not automatically linked to each other?
Yes and no. So if you see what we do home appliances. And if you look way back, and I'm going to be super stereotyped, so sorry for that, 90% of the chores are done by women. And you can imagine that if you need to mop your floor, it takes you a lot of time to mop the floor. That time, by actually making it electrical, is given back to the woman to do stuff to develop herself, to take a different role, right? You can have a career, you can study, because you don't need to do the home jobs anymore. You can actually be part of society. So yes, I do believe that turning houses into homes really is engraved in what we have done, and also how we started the company. Well, we didn't start, but Mr. Philips started ages ago. The caring part, if you ever go to Eindhoven and you see the Strijp S region, it's all about housing. There was a lot of care for their employees when the founders started the company. And that really, in vain, is turning a house into a home, right? Your office is then even literally a home in Eindhoven.
Yeah, and I think that's the turning at the home in Eindhoven, and Lord Lever had the home at Port Sunlight, and maybe now the new company. So one of the things that we saw in the results of our brand growth study was also related to the companies that do very well. And what you see amongst marketers is that they tend to appoint the newer companies, the companies that started 20 years ago. Do you have a reason for that? Why let's say, the companies with more tradition and more heritage are automatically linked to corporate social responsibility?
Yeah, I think if you go back to any brand you are working on, usually founders who started it, I work for KraftHeinz as well, and one of their brands is Carl van Sevinton. And Carl van Sevinton also started it's a lemonade brand. It started just after war, when there was a lack of vitamin C. So the whole starting point of the brand started with the fact that there was a lack of vitamin C, and by lemonade, people could actually get more vitamin C. So a lot go deep on the brand stories, because most brand stories are usually started from a frustration from the founders. So maybe we as marketeers reinvented the wheel 15 times and we lost the story, but I can guarantee 90% of the brands I worked for, and I've worked for a lot of brands, you know, have a great story in the roots of their brand. So maybe it's time to rub that diamond again.
Yeah, and if you think about it, so there are many ingredients for growth, and I will ask that the same question also to other people that will tell a story. But if you look at different ingredients, we've looked at the role of innovation, we looked at the role of creative, and how do you, within Versuni, mix, let's say, the role of innovation and corporate social responsibility? Do you use sustainability frictions as a way to develop new products as well?
Yes, I think sustainability, well, there's a part of it that really goes around cost, right? If you make it if you take waste as a commercial cost, then sustainability is also reduced by reducing the waste, which reduces cost, which is a good business case. So I do believe it is part of our corporate way of working, right? To see where do we have waste, and it has a positive effect also on the sustainability aisle, but especially also on the people part, right? So how can we basically make sure that we take care of our people, that we do something that's also right from a consumer perspective. So innovation, cost, and people are so related in our corporate way of working at Versuni.
And do you think that consumers also make that link? So do you think that, you mentioned something about the choice with your wallet or the choice for the planet, but do you think that if you as a consumer know how you treat people, how you put people in the first position in your organization, do you think they care? Do you think that is an important part of making a decision?
I think they expect us to do that.
It's
a hygiene factor.
Okay.
So it becomes a problem if you don't hit the threshold.
Okay.
And I think there are companies that really can stand out, and they will, and they are also positively admired for it. But if we look at the numbers, and I know you like numbers, you know that I like numbers too, 20% is really acting, or 26% is really acting on it. So the majority just expects you to do good.
Yeah. And there you already mentioned a couple of examples of companies that do well with a story around it, and you will share also some of those stories. But besides, beyond those companies, are there any companies, because I think marketing is also not only inventing the wheel yourself, but also looking at other companies. Who do you consider as a really good company to look into how they develop their strategy, how they link it to communication, beyond, let's say, the obvious examples that we all know, and maybe also some of the things that you mentioned, some of a hidden secret?
Yeah, so one of the brands I really love is Nyenrode. It's a Swedish fashion brand for kids, and they are so deliberately choosing their fabrics, the length of use, on their long lasting. So there are great examples out there that are maybe super tiny, but have an impact on daily life anyway.
Okay. Well, thanks. Thanks for your presentation again, and thanks for your insights and the story that you've shared.